We got an interesting thing going on. Obviously, Roy Moore's race against Doug Jones in Alabama heating up. We are just literally a couple of days away. Tuesday is the day where this election is going to happen. I would be pretty surprised, frankly, if Doug Jones won. Alabama has a long history of not voting for Democrats, particularly these days, but it's possible. And we will talk more about that. But, as we, in the last hour, we were talking about this phenomena of the media abdicating its role over the past 20 years of making assessments that are rather and clearly objective. And it has, in many respects, I think, has opened up this door of the whole fake news thing. I mean, they were under assault for years by things like Fox News and right-wing talk radio, so that there was a narrative that was constantly banging up against the news media. And the news media, broadly speaking, took a very sort of, I think, generically corporate approach, which is we're just not going to get involved in the controversy. We could step back from this, and that's that. And I think slowly they started to realize, like, oh, we're not a soap company. We actually need to make assessments. That's our role in society, right? We can't send a reporter out there because how do we know? Maybe it's all in the reporter's mind. Maybe everybody's just a member of a dream in the reporter's mind, and I mean, you could take it that far if you have that principle that we're not going to make assessments. We're only going to report. Well, that's silly. And so when we're faced, and we were talking about what story we should talk about next, and I realized, like, whether it's what's going on with Russia and the administration, what's going on with Roy Moore, what's going on with the tax plan. This all fits into the same, all of these, the way these stories are covered fits into this rubric, because for years we were told that Republicans care about the deficit in the face of every single bit of evidence. For years, our media has allowed Republicans to pretend that supply side trickle down economics works. Right? I mean, this is something I saw a historian on the Great Depression. In the late 1800s, you had Republicans talking about seep down economics, essentially, where they would cut taxes on the wealthy and it would seep down to it. I mean, this has been around forever and has never, ever worked. We got Kansas just 2 years ago, I mean, all the way back in 2014 or 2015, reversed the damage from this massive tax cut that Sam Brownback imposed on them. And it was reversed by Republicans who realized how devastating it was. And now we have this tax bill, which is not just about cutting taxes. This is fundamentally undercutting the pillars of support in our country. And I'll tell you something, you haven't seen the same level of pushback from or activism, and certainly not the same level, I think, of funding for this activism. But I got a call this week on my daily show, The Majority Report, and it was a woman who was actually reading for a man who is got cerebral palsy, who can't speak. And he wrote that he has been able to live a fulfilling life for one reason only, and that is Medicaid. That Medicaid has allowed him to get in-home care and to lead as normal of a life as you can when you have a cerebral palsy and you don't have the ability to talk. And he is terrified, and rightly so, that this is going to kill him. That he is going to be stuck in a room for the rest of his life. And people don't understand the implications of this stuff beyond just the taxes. And it's incredibly frustrating. This is aside from all the failure of drafting this legislation and the process and all this. This is real human suffering that's going to come from this legislation.
Oh my God, it's absolutely horrifying. And when you look at, this even members, economic advisors in the Bush administration are looking at this tax plan and going, what in the hell are they doing? I mean, this isn't, it seems to be almost, it's chaotic. The process was terrible, but the basic point of it is clearly to, reward wealthy, oligarchs and corporations at the expense of virtually everybody else. I mean, we've never seen anything like this before. Even mainstream Republicans who, are always for tax cuts and they love them. They're looking at this, scratching their heads, going, this makes no sense. I mean, and not to mention the fact that it's going to grow the deficit. But I think we have to remember that this is really, that part of it is a feature, not a bug. This is Grover Norquist's plan, which is starve the beast, and it's to, what you do is that you do massive tax cuts to the point where the government's debt grows tremendously, and they are then in a position where they can make the argument that they have to cut the hell out of everything. And some of these Republicans in the Congress, even ones like Marco Rubio, who we're supposed to believe is some kind of a reasonable, Republican senator, mainstream regular guy, he's out there telling people, yes, after this is done, we're going to immediately start looking at Social Security and Medicare. Now, that would go against an explicit promise by Donald Trump, but, like his word is worth anything. I never believed that.
Right.
Anyway, and what they're going to do is go after things like disability insurance for people like the man you were just talking about, people who get money from the government because they are unable to work. And, I don't know what these people think is supposed to happen. I guess you're supposed to go down to the food pantry and get, some church is going to drop by and bring you, canned goods or something. But, I mean, this is literally what we're talking about, and they aren't making any bones about it. And interestingly, though, Sam, is that the polling is showing that this is the most unpopular tax bill ever, and that includes tax hikes in the past. Even Republicans aren't buying it. Only the hardcore Trumpies are on board with this thing. Everybody is seeing through it. Now, that doesn't help us if they pass it, I mean, this is
right.
a big problem. But it at least shows that somehow or another, even though the press has been, totally irresponsible throughout, that somehow or another news is filtering out to people that this is a monstrosity of a bill and they don't like it. They don't want it. And it's the vast majority, even a lot of Republicans, I mean, even people who are just, blindly following the Republican line no matter what, are going, well, this doesn't sound so good. So, that doesn't help us if they pass it, obviously, and Donald Trump will strut around like, he's our newfound king. But nonetheless, it is slightly, just a tiny bit hopeful that the American public is not buying it at this point. I mean, that's all we can hang on to and hope that somehow that translates into, at the very least, trying to turn one house of Congress in next year. I mean, God help us if we don't.
Indeed. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. I'm talking to the great Heather Parton. You may know her as Digby. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.